one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pleasure. An updated version of where we stand right now in your packets. These are the most recent copies, going from grades 1 through 4. They're going to contain changes from what you may have read online, because it's going to be an ongoing year-long approach. If you do approve these recommendations, as it says in the memo, we'll finalize the copies to use for the first trimester. The intention is to have the format of all the report cards consistent and aligned to the current grade 2 report. So again, when you go through, I have them in order by grades. The second grade is the format that we feel that we're going to use. They're kind of looking that way, but again, it's still a work in progress. We would have them ready. We also, as I said, to continue to make those changes. And the current proposal calls for the specialist report card to be a standalone. The specialist was somewhat concerned that when we decided to do this, that maybe they wouldn't be represented as well as they would like to, so we give them an opportunity to come up with their own report card, and that's one of the pages toward the back of the packet. They are going to use the satisfactory, the needs improvement, and unsatisfactory for the students. I also included a couple of things at the end in regards to the leveling equivalent. When we talk about Fontes and Pinnell and the guided reading, we talk sometimes about a student being on an A level or being on an H level, things along those lines. There's a numerical equivalent in there. If you look at it, if you were to get to it, for instance, like a level G would be 1.6. It just gives you where a child may stand, and that's what we're going to use on the report card. So if just for the sake of conversation, if you wanted to take out that second grade report card, what we're going to be doing here is we're aligning it to the Common Core, and also now that we have the Go Math program in place, we're going to be using a percentage grade for the trimester. And we're going to be breaking down math into the four main areas, and also listing some of those standards that are going to be covered during that trimester. And a student, if they were to have needs improvement, they'd be marked off on that report card underneath that column. And for English language arts, we're going to be giving the instructional reading level, which aligns with that flow chart that I had given you, and also the grade level. So now the parents are not going to say, well, gee, what the heck is a level J? They'll know what level J is by looking at that. We do also intend to send home a pamphlet with the parents informing them of the changes and explaining the progress of the report card. We're also going to be, I'm going to be presenting to the PTO next Tuesday at the Macomber School to let them, make them aware of the changes and to go from there. So we're going to be showing percentages for the 3 trimesters in math. For the ELA, we're going to be using just the instructional reading level and the grade level. For trimesters 2 and 3, we would be putting a percentage to that document. Also, if you look on the second page, for the science and for the social studies, for the lower grades, we're going to use satisfactory and unsatisfactory for science and social studies, as well as for the student responsibilities. It would be a satisfactory or unsatisfactory. There'd be a section there for comments, as well as attendance. And at the bottom it says, please sign and return the envelope. So that's what we're looking to do with it being a pilot. The reason that the individual report cards look a little different right now is the grade levels took their time and got together and tried to decide which standards they would be addressing. Came up with a couple of different formats. With the, as I said, the second grade is the one that we feel most comfortable with.
Now, I have a question.
Sure.
I know a little bit about these letters just from being in the classroom, and all of the books in the teachers' book libraries have a sticker on the back, and the kids know what those stickers mean and where they should be reading.
Right.
Is there a way that, because I know it's confusing for me, even being in there when I do volunteer, is there a way that we can educate the parents on, say, what an E level book is, or what an I level book is? Because I do see, I'm not, when I look in the library, I'm not seeing just books that we've necessarily purchased or are using as a series. These are books that the teachers have maybe had in their libraries. It's books that we probably have at home. And so how do we make sure, from a parent standpoint, as we're getting this information, which I do think is very good, that we're reading appropriate level books with our students and not too hard that they're not ready and they're getting frustrated, but hard enough that we're challenging them?
There is a program that is sponsored by Scholastic, and Scholastic has a program. It's called Book Wizard, and it's free. And so what we can do is we can actually send home a pamphlet that explains how to do that. You basically, it's an online program. You go to the Scholastic website, you just click on Book Wizard, and then what you're able to do is it gives you just a text box, and you can type in 2 or 3 sentences from that particular book, and it will automatically give you the level.
Okay.
So that's what the teachers do, as well as we've also provided the public library with that information as well. So they have an understanding when students come in to select books, they know exactly what level the child is at, 'cause the kids know, as you said. And so then from there, the library is also able to access that as well.
That's wonderful then.
All right, that'll be part of the brochure that I just mentioned a few moments ago, too.
Okay.
At the open house, for those that attended, and we also put it online, we did have a brochure for parents explaining what guided reading was about, and what the reading levels were, and we will print that again and make sure that that's available.
Okay, good. Tony?
So, Tom, looking at the second grade report card, across the top, you have the 3 trimesters, you get the percentages.
Right.
So say the first trimester, you get a percentage there. That's
That's the overall percentage for all the different standards. However, down the bottom where it's listed, maybe a child is struggling in certain areas. So it's going to be more, it's going to still address the standards. It will give the specific areas that maybe the child may need some help with
right. So a child gets an 80%.
overall. But they still may need help in some of the different areas. So now the parents would be made aware of that, and during the course of the parent-teacher conferences, that would be explained to the parent.
And then the 3 columns on the right, what would be there?
That's only going to be checked off if they need improvement. So for instance, suppose your child did have an 80% on the first trimester in math, but they were still having difficulty with understanding place value. In the old format, previously, it would be an 80% next to math, and it was 80% this way. It's 80%, which is still, it's at mastery, but still there are obviously some areas that they are still struggling with. So this will highlight. So there will be an X in the standard where the child is having particular difficulty, and that's going to be in all of the standards and all of the subjects.
So the parent will be able to look, okay, John is, he's doing 80%, not so bad, but he obviously needs help with, multiplication, whatever.
Exactly.
Also, in regards to the Go Math program, there are a lot of online components that are available for parents that we're still kind of working out what to give to parents to not really confuse them, but to enable them to utilize that program better. So as Mrs. Church, our Title I math person, she's in the process of trying to refine that. She just visited a school in, I think, Tewksbury yesterday and came back with information. They've been using that program now for 3 years. So she's going to share information. We are going to make that available to the parents, too, to align what are we doing in Unit 2, and they will be able to go online to see what's going on and maybe to help their children.
Carolina?
Yeah, I have a question about, my son in first grade actually went on Go Math, and I was confused. He figured it out, but I couldn't figure it out. It was...
That's why we don't want to throw too much out there at once.
He came home with the little login, and he wanted me to log him in right away, so...
All right.
In the English, you're doing reading level, grade level, but what are you doing with regard to writing?
The writing is down below, the writing and the language. For this first semester, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, our first trimester, we're not going to put a percentage grade to that. We're still in the process of developing the writing program and what are going to be the common assessments and what the rubrics are going to be and how to score them.
Okay, so you're still doing 1, 2, 3, 4? I mean, or you're not doing that report card? Is that one of my second?
We're not going to use the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s for right now.
We're not using the 1, 2s, and 3s, and 4s.
So there was no second grade report card?
No, there will be.
But there wasn't one, because my first grader came home with a report card.
Oh, no. The first grade, as you see, there was a progress
report.
report. So they kind of look like a report card, but they're not. They were progress reports. You will be getting a report card for first grade, though.
Okay.
Michael?
I just want to thank you for presenting the new format, I'm assuming. We didn't make much reference to the old report card,
Right.
although you outlined the changes. But I followed along. I had my experience with elementary probably 3 report cards back, so
Right.
it's different, but it seems to me to be a good synopsis of the educational experience, and I look forward to arranging for the preset appointment for the school committee member to come and visit the schools, where it's the policy to not show up at the schools unless there's a public assembly. So I'll be contacting the superintendent's office and visiting, so I can see how things are going at the elementary.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
On page 2, you've got science, satisfactory, unsatisfactory. Does that,
Grade 2, page 2?
yes, it's grade 2,
Okay.
yeah, the same one. Is that just going to be something that's circled, or is that, are we, and I guess this kind of goes back to Tony's question about the columns on the right, under trimester 1, 2. Is this going to say satisfactories and unsatisfactories in those columns, or?
Yes, because science and social studies is graded just by the standards, so that you're not necessarily going to be looking for a needs improvement or at grade level, at standard.
Okay.
So each of these would be graded with an S if they have met the standard satisfactorily, or a U if they have not met the standard. And hopefully you would be aware of that through grades and conferences and different kinds of communication with the classroom teacher.
Okay. Anything else? Eric?
How did this originate? Like, what was the parent council that started this, or what? How did we get to this
No,
point?
we were having a meeting one day at the school council, and some of the teachers expressed their satisfaction with the old format, with the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s, because sometimes it's so objective or subjective, it kind of varies, and what one person would perceive as being a 3, someone else might give it a 2, and it was like a kind of a fine line. So we thought that the percentages were important to bring back to as much as we could.
Okay.
It also aligns much better with the middle school, so that the 3rd and 4th grade, there's a much more of an alignment to the comparison between kids going from 3rd grade to 4th grade and then to 5th grade. The 4, 3, 2s, and 1s are not being used in the middle school at all. So the teachers really were not, it didn't give a very clear synopsis of what the child's, what the expectation was for the child arriving in
Yeah, I
middle
think
school.
3 years ago, when we went over that 1, 2, 3, 4, we knew it was going to be a problem with the parents and everyone else. That hard to understand.
It's hard for the teachers, too.
But we do welcome all questions, because again, this is in the formative stages, and having 4 parents from the elementary school sitting there, any questions you have are certainly helpful to us, so that we can make sure this works the way people can really understand it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a testy mic today. On to the Westport Middle School PCD updates.
A little while back, we received the first set of errors for the year, and one of the surprises we had was the guidance office came up higher than the 300 microliters per meter squared that we had set up as a limit. One of the things that we know is there's been a couple of those rooms in that area that have not come down below 300. This one, the one next door was tested and was below 300. And we also have other rooms in the school that, similar to this, have been above 300, and therefore we're not using them for students. For example, 251 and 250, it's a kind of like a room that has a partition, but usually it's open. So we call it one room altogether. It's one of the computer labs that we used to use. We haven't used it all this year because the numbers were high there too. However, the other lab on the other side of the media center, room 258, that lab came down below 300. So, knowing that there were questions at the last school committee meeting as to, one, can we verify these results, and also can we try to figure out why the results came that way they did, I basically asked Fuzz and O'Neill to try to identify other sources of PCBs and to try to look for the same kinds of materials in other rooms, ones that were high and ones that were low. So that's when we chose 251 and 258. 258 being the low room, 251 being a room that came back high. Both rooms have internal windows. They have had their carpets removed, replaced with tile. The coves, the baseboard coves have been installed new. If there was any tectum ceiling was removed, and then both of those rooms also have an air conditioner in it. When we went back and retested, we found that again the vinyl base this time came about back low in all three rooms. There was no high numbers that we may need remediation, but nothing else. The interior windows all came down below 50 parts per million, so that again would need to be remediated, but not necessarily removed and treated as a source material. The air conditioning caulk, interestingly, came back high again in the guidance office, and it came high in the 258 room, which doesn't have high air concentrations of PCBs. However, the room with the 251 that had high concentrations, the caulk in that around that air conditioning unit did not have high concentrations. And then the other thing we tested was the paint, to make sure it wasn't the paint. And again, the paint in the guidance office and the room 258 came back high, and 251 was low but close to the 50 parts per million. Finally, we also tested the cement, and again, it came back with some PCBs in it, low that it would need to be remediated, but not necessarily removed. Ceiling tiles in the guidance office, it's not the big ceiling tiles. They look like the old tectum material, but they're not glued to anything. They're suspended on a track ceiling. Those came back below 50 parts per million, but still with PCBs in them. Since then, I've called Fussen O'Neill twice. He has been in contact with the EPA, and EPA directed us to a newly published study that they have that shows that some materials could be what they call sinks. In other words, they can pull PCBs out of other materials, including perhaps the air. They don't have a causal effect, they don't have the mechanism, but they have a study that shows that in places where you have high air concentrations, materials such as cement and paint have been known to have high concentrations as well. In particular, what we are concerned with is the caulk around the ACs, the paint, all those materials, and even the cement may have absorbed that over the years and now have it in it, and maybe off-gassing, as they call it, a little bit at a time. The problem is, if you take a look at the way 258 is constructed, it has a lot more ventilation than 251, or even the guidance office that has almost no ventilation in it. So we're thinking room 258, because of the higher amount of ventilation, has been able to maintain the low amount in the air, whereas these other rooms that don't have as much ventilation, even these small concentrations, whether it be in the paint on the walls or in the caulk around the air condition, may bring it higher. So we're just trying to figure out where the concentrations of high airs are coming from in the rooms that have high concentrations, and then what to do about any materials that we may find that have PCBs in it above the regulation limits. If it's above 50, it's supposed to be treated as a source material, unless you can show that the materials were put in there after PCBs were banned and therefore should not have any PCBs. So the indications from the EPA is that you could probably leave them in place and remediate, like we did, for example, the ceilings after the tectum was removed and the glue was scraped off. So it may limit the amount of work we need to do in there. That information will go to the engineers when they put the report as to what needs to happen with that building. And they'll probably have some different scenarios as to if you go this far, this is what you're going to get. If you go that far, this is what you're going to get. The problem is we may end up having to remediate quite a bit of material. That means that, for example, any exposed cement would have to be sealed or masonry. It means that any paint that's there may contain PCBs absorbed over the years and would have to be repainted.
So I have a question.
Michael.
And
Could I ask a few questions?
can I finish and
No,
then?
it's relative to what I'm able to comprehend at this point, Dr. Colley. We have a format that we've used last year. It's no longer on the website. And I just, as much as I appreciate you sharing 2 inches of paper with dialogue, it's a lot to absorb. And that's why we had previously a floor map. So if we were referring to a room, it was red. If it was a problem area, we had signals to the community. It's dropped off the website. Copies of some of the monitoring has gone home, and this is not the way to communicate it. I'm not hearing you. I'm hearing about rooms that aren't a problem. I'm hearing about PCBs. Let's get this information flowing more accurately. That's all I've ever asked in relationship, so that we can then make decisions on PCBs. I do have a request as well in the line of communication on PCBs. I think that we should ask the school council to take it up on the next agenda to involve the community to attend that meeting and share with us as a school committee any concerns or feedback they have on this building. Thank you.
All right.
I'll wait till after.
Okay.
I just have a few questions after he's done.
Okay.
Honestly, I didn't know that that information was not on the website because we have actually made it available in the past. That grid that shows what it was before, what rooms were tested, what quarter of the year. So we had that information.
I've asked for it and been told it's no longer available.
Who did you ask? Who did you ask?
Technology person, and I've asked for it. So I'm asking again.
Oh, okay, I can make it available, but that's why I'm looking because I
Let's
thought it
put it
was
on
still
tomorrow
in there.
then. Thank you.
Okay. The question is this, eventually we need to, and yes, you're right, it should be not just the group here, but the community should understand that there are PCBs in the building, that right now the indication is that the PCBs have been absorbed by more materials than we knew until just recently, that now these materials have it in them and would need to be remediated. If we choose the remediation route versus removal, because removal would mean a lot, the remediation route would leave us open to having to test forever and ever and ever. The other concern that I've shared with the engineer is that right now the building runs with more ventilation than it was designed to run in. So one, the HVAC systems are running overtime. So my concern is that perhaps motors and different components will wear out sooner. And two, the air exchange is allowing some of the heat to escape the building at a higher rate than we used to have, and therefore may affect our heating costs over the next however long we keep the building. So there are some considerations that, hopefully the engineer will be able to put some numbers to it and be able to say, here's, if you go this route, here's what will happen. If you go that route, here's what will happen, to give us an idea of where we need to go with it. Like I said, you can cover a lot of it with encapsulant materials, which kind of looks like paint, and you can probably put some tint to it so it can be like painting the whole school again, but some materials would probably need to be removed and replaced, along with removing what's left of the PCBs that are there.
Eric?
Two things. I've seen the paint that's been put on, actually, parent-teacher conference. I don't know if any of you just looked up. The walls, the ceilings are absolutely disgusting, the only word for them. Doesn't look like anything was done to them. Second of all, after hearing all this what you've said, it seems like it's leading back to one conclusion, that it's in the cement masonry and it's in the building. And I've said at least 4 times, I think Mr. Viveris was with me when we were in the band room, and Bob May, our engineer that we keep paying over and over again to come up with the same conclusion. This building cannot be used. It's in this porous cement. Said very back in the very beginning, this building should not be used anymore. And a year and a half later, we're still talking about, right back to the same thing we knew almost 2 years ago, that it's seeped into the system. It's all in the joists, all the sealant cement, and this is going to be a never-ending story of where it's coming from. It's coming from here, coming from there. It's in the cement, and we're not getting rid of it. We've known that for about 2 years now.
I wasn't there when he made that statement. I know what he has said to me is, if you simply remediate, which would be to encapsulate any materials that contain above the limit, that you can stay in the building as long as the air monitoring continues, and you can have the air remain below 300.
But we can't.
But what are,
Well, in some rooms we can, and in some rooms we can't. And again, the issue is to keep it there. My concerns are, one, you're going to have the additional cost year after year of the
Testing.
of the testing, and the additional cost of possibly heat, and the additional cost of possibly having components having to be replaced on a much quicker timeline than you otherwise would. So, can you keep the building open? Perhaps, but again, that may be a question for a larger audience to make. If you're going to have some rooms that you can't use, or that from time to time you may have to close, provide more ventilation, do more remediation, you're right, it's going to be a long-term hassle of going in and out of different rooms, trying to figure out what's happening in each one of them.
Mike?
But for the most part, they've all, at least the classrooms have come down.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In an effort to resolve this discussion and information that we're announcing, I think it's important to ask if the chair would allow a motion at this time relative to this piece that's on the informational agenda. I do not believe you would have anticipated this motion, but therefore I would like the opportunity to make such.
I'm curious what it is, Mike.
So I'd like to make a motion that relative to the RFP that's gone out for monitoring services and PCB remediation, that following current policy would be submitted to Dr. Colley, and he would select the vendor. I'm very concerned with the information that we've announced this evening, and I believe we should consider my motion that all RFPs will be forwarded on to the school committee for review.
Is there a
I'll second for sake of discussion like we do. I need to hear.
Okay. Mike?
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Madam Chairwoman, because I know it wasn't on the agenda, but I'm very concerned with the management of the middle school PCB issue. We've now gone out to an RFP, request for proposals, from management companies, and the title of that RFP is, Dr. Colley, do you know offhand? I know it refers to PCB remediation and management, but it's not all encompassing. And I think we need to bring in, that first vendor that will be coming in here and working with us on that first phase, I think needs to be our leader in going forward on this issue.
The RFP, and this was brought up at another school committee meeting, the RFP, all that it's seeking to do is to maintain the cycle of testing the rooms 1/4 of the building at a time to ensure, as you were suggesting, that we do have the errors below the threshold that we set so that students could be in the classrooms and we could keep the school open.
I read the RFP, so keeping on the motion, what we're doing is relieving you of the decision on which vendors we'll be selecting. The motion is to forward all those submittals to the school committee for review. I've read the request today.
Okay.
And so getting back to the discussion, I just want to urge that if you're satisfied with the way the PCBs in the middle school project has been handled, let's let Dr. Colley continue to select vendors that come in and service this problem. Or let's take it upon ourselves as the elected officials and the top decision makers of this organization to take that responsibility on our own. Because I think that if we decide to go that route, we've recognized, as I indicate through my motion, there is a need for a change.
Eric.
Through the chair, I'm trying to imagine how this would look and how this would actually be accomplished. Is it more appropriate to have a subcommittee of 2 school committee people and the superintendent? Or, I'm just trying to figure out how this may look. You know, is it going to be every 2 weeks you have to act on something because we have to post meetings? That's why I'm...
They're due in on December 7th. It was posted on the 23rd. I'd like to talk about that window of time, if it's sufficient. I'd like to know where it was posted. We're not involved in that. We're letting this one go. We need to be involved in this process. Yes, it was submitted to us last week. Yes, it is online. Do you know where it's been published? Do you know if it's gone out to any environmental management companies for review? Now is the time to take leadership and your responsibilities for the school.
Carolina?
This proposal is just for the testing that's been occurring in the school. And I wasn't here when the original contract company was selected, so I just have a couple of questions. How was the first contract done?
That one was basically a company brought on by the engineering firm that was going to do the windows. And when we discovered the PCBs, not last summer, the previous summer, they were brought on basically the emergency of we need to open the school because we had like 4 or 5 weeks to open school before September started last year. And one of the requirements from the EPA, once you have PCBs involved, is if you're not going to remove them all, you have to maintain a system of monitoring. And we decided to do 4 times a year so we could test a fourth of the school as we went along.
My question was how was that company selected, the company we're using now?
The company, it's still the same company. We did not make any RFPs. Mr. Sullivan said, reminded me that it would be a good idea to go out and get an RFP so that we would put it out to bid now that it's not an emergency. So that's where I went ahead and took the information that we used originally from the original engineering material information they gave us on the company, put the RFP together, gave the 2 weeks notice it's supposed to be, posted it in the newspaper where it's supposed to be, and I had my procurement manual in front of me while I did it.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Tony.
So Dr. Colley, so then when we get those people responding to that, then you usually bring that in front of the school committee and then we pick someone.
So far, there's 5 companies that have expressed an interest and received notification of the RFP document itself, because what you put in the newspaper and what we post on the online is more of a summary. Basically, it's the announcement of the RFP.
You bring to the school committee when you get that information?
Once it's done. Because one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to, evaluate the proposal based on the merits of the companies that are applying, and then 2, on the price that they bring forward. So it's not it's not a request for quotes or bids, it's a request for a proposal. So it's a slightly different model where you first evaluate the companies that apply based on their experience, based on who the people are that are going to be doing the work for you. You set up a system.
Information.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which of you, okay, Michael.
Well, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go into the history and how we got to where we are today. Yes, an emergency waiver was issued when we had an emergency. It was communicated to me that emergency order was not to continue, and I shared that with the superintendent's office, and it's taken quite a bit of time to get this RFP out. The waiver for the initial cleanup, the span of time that those waivers are for, does not match up with the contracts that have been in place. It's time for us to be involved in this. We have weekly reports. We have not heard much about this other than it being announced last week. But I think if we have 5 people that have information, I think it should be before us. We should know about it. And the report tonight supports the need for change.
Eric?
I do have a little concern because we went from an initial 1.5 to 3.1, and we've kept all the same players. Bob May, who day one said, I think you were there, right, Tony? It's useless to try to fix this building. We've gone through over and over again. Even last week, our last meeting when we spoke about doing this case study, we wanted to use the same company that already had most of the information. So I think we're just writing checks to people because this is a cash cow. And I don't know what the answer is to it. I just know that we need to stop spending money, and it's going to be never ending for our town.
Well,
Tony?
I mean, to that, all I can say is what I think we've been saying all along, until we know exactly what it would cost or not cost to remediate, clean, fix, repair, remodel, whatever, that school, we can't go, I want to build a new school tomorrow, great, but that's not gonna wash in town, the taxpayers. We need to have something for them. That analysis, that report will be, what we need when we get that early spring or early next year. When we get that, we'll, as of right now, we don't know. Okay, we know the PCBs are here. I mean, is it a surprise to anybody here that they're finding PCBs in the ceiling tiles? Of course not. Not to me. It's there right now. We're managing a problem until we get that study. I mean, we don't know which way to go. What are we going to decide? To close that school tonight and do what?
Oh, no, I don't plan on doing that.
Michael?
The motivation for the motion on the table is totally safety. It hasn't even started to look at the financial implications. I don't like the format that the presentation took tonight. There was no indication of whether or not there's any hazards in that building. And we need that answer. We need it now. We don't need it in the spring. And now's the time for us to get involved in this. It's what we signed on for. I don't know what happened to the grid with the color codes that we decided was the right way to communicate for visual learners. And it certainly helps me. And it was frustrating to look at that report last week, and when I received it, I then went and saw the RFP, and I thought now is a good opportunity for us to help to manage this issue. We're not communicating what's going on, so now's the motion is for us to be involved with the decision on December 8th, which is the close of the RFPs.
Carolina?
I mean, that last report that he was just talking about, my understanding, the purpose of that was that the guidance office was elevated and they were trying to figure out why that room keeps coming back high. So they went in and they did some additional testing to some materials, mastic, caulking, they tested the paint. So that was something different and apart than the normal air testing that took place in the rooms. I didn't see that as part of the normal air testing process that goes in, where you get the results and you look at the grids and you see all the color-coded stuff. There was an elevated room. There were concerns about why that room kept coming back elevated, and they wanted to see if they could find the source. I mean, I went to the middle school and spoke with the principal. I looked at that room. We talked about the mastic. We talked about the walls and what we thought maybe should be tested, and it was suggested that certain things should be tested. Mr. Simonello said maybe we should test this, maybe we should test that. And so as a result of those conversations, I believe there was a request made for some additional testing to try and identify better the source of the elevation. That's what that report that he was just talking about was, in my reading of it. It had nothing to do with the normal testing
I'd like
process.
to stay on the motion. The motion is to relieve Dr. Colley of making a decision, okay? I don't know what you're even talking about and the tour you had. I know we as a school committee have asked for the schematic diagrams of all of the air circulation systems throughout the building. Have we received it? Maybe on our visits we've seen some more information than I have. Where is the HVAC diagrams? You have asked for it in a public meeting. I've never seen a copy. It's never been shared with us. I'll tell you about some schools in Massachusetts that have had their entire air HVAC system removed because of PCBs that was used in HVAC systems. It's time for us to take control of this major problem. That's what the motion does. It doesn't refer to any reports.
Can you just read back the motion that Michael made, please?
To relieve Dr. Colley of the responsibility.
Sorry. Little more than the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll be happy to
Ask for a
repeat it.
motion relevant to the piece of this agenda, relevant to RFPs that has gone out to the PCB services for mediation, information that has gone out to Dr. Colley and is now looking towards the school committee for further review.
Is that right, Mike?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Is there no more discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
Sure.
Tony?
I mean, we are the school committee. We're the ones that make the final decisions, all these decisions. I mean, if some of us want to be more involved on the day-to-day decisions, which, you know, we've been testing.
Tony, the motion is over.
I know. I'm just
Ally,
making a
can
point.
you just, do you want to add to any of what he's mentioned on this particular information?
Nothing more than Dr. Colley
Okay.
had spoken about. We had a discussion about it. We went through the room. We went back and forth, and I know that somebody from that organization, I think it was Bob May, came down and also had a conversation about what we should test, making suggestions on why things are higher than they are. They went ahead and tested on, it was election day, that the man was there doing all the testings and the caulkings and whatnot, trying to figure out where all this is coming from. Some of the paint samples that he scratched off was brand new paint, you know, and how did that get PCBs in it and whatnot.
So it is brand new paint, so it's still
The brand new
seeking-
paint, the counselor's office was painted right before we moved back into it.
2 years ago.
During the last
This
2
summer.
years. We just did it ourselves just to aesthetically make it look better.
You had done your office too.
I'm sorry?
You did your office
Yes,
too.
yeah. And he scratched off when he did that testing that we all sat there, suggested about what to test. He scratched that off and found PCBs in that paint.
Because I was going to ask there was a mention about the air conditioning, the caulking around the air conditioning.
Yep.
How long is that? That was a question I actually had. Was that new caulking?
Some of that, Mike was there. And
He
Mike-
said one, maybe 10, 15 years old. The other one, he said, maybe about 6 or 7. And the other one, he said, is only about, 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
So they're different ages, and somehow that caulk that, purchased probably at Home Depot seems to have it in it.
You talked about scraping paint, and I didn't make sense, because if they encapsulated PCB material, and then they went and scraped the new paint off, they probably picked up some of what they encapsulated.
No, I'm
No.
sorry. When I said that they had painted the paint that they scraped off in that counselor's office. If you remember, last school year, we were in a different wing of the building. And they ripped up all the carpets and did everything, and they okayed those rooms. When I say we, myself and the counselors came in there, and we said, we ripped up everything. Let's throw a coat of paint on the wall just to make it look halfway decent for us. So one Saturday, we slapped a coat of paint up, bought at Home Depot, just to make it look a little bit more appealing. We moved in, blah, blah, blah. That was the paint that he scraped off of the wall board that had never been tested. And he said, well, let's, test the wall board.
It wasn't
that
the encapsulating.
It was not encapsulating paint.
On those walls, no.
Yes.
Did you have your hand up, Eric?
Just to go back, if I may, one mention, what Eric had said about the ceilings, that is accurate, though. There are a lot of the ceilings, when you look at it, the encapsulating paint that you're talking about
Looks awful.
has flaked, some of it.
flaked?
Yeah, there
A
are
couple
some
of rooms.
Really bad in 2 of my son's classes.
There's some rooms that
Terrible.
they never finished it. They finished the top, but they never finished the concrete. I don't know if they ran out of it or whatnot, but it's been there. So I just wanted to comment on that.
The only part that
is
should,
actually flaking?
the only part that should have been encapsulated is the ceilings where they had the glued on tectum.
Okay.
In some places, actually, I think they went overboard and went down the walls.
I'm sorry. I think you're right. They just did have extra paint. Say, hey, let's go down the cement pole.
Right.
And some of them went halfway down the pole, others all the way down the pole.
Eric?
Since we seem to be talking about a motion that was already defeated, I may as well just jump on the bandwagon also.
Well, I'm just talking about the
so,
results.
We've been wanting a clerk of works since day one. We're going to be hearing a presentation later that we need to possibly hire a supervisor for special ed to relieve the special ed director of a few of her responsibilities. I think that was the whole purpose, it's just to relieve Dr. Colley and let him run the schools as a superintendent and let us take the responsibility of being a group of 5 clerk of works. That's how I took it. I wouldn't want his job. I think that was the intent of it, and that's all I have to say.
Anything else that you want to add on this?
Just one last thing, with Dr. Colley's approval, if any of you want to come to the building, be more than happy to walk you through the rooms that we're talking about, show you, the air conditioners we're talking about, just so you have a better idea of, what's going on. So, just I want to let that out if he's fine with it. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. On to the FY14 budget timeline.
Yesterday, the budget subcommittee met.
Was it yesterday? Did you guys meet yesterday?
Was it yesterday? Or
Monday.
the day before? Monday? Monday.
I was going to say, I thought maybe you met twice.
My days are blending into each other. The budget subcommittee met. I presented some preliminary information to the committee. I was asked to provide something similar to last year's timeline. So I basically took last year's budget timeline memo and just updated it for you, which you have on your calendars, on your blotters today. And basically, just a couple of things you need to know. The town manager asked departments to send him a level services budget by 12/18. After discussion, and correct me, gentlemen, if I'm wrong, after the discussion we had, we felt that we perhaps did not want to follow the timeline that the town had in that fashion. So I basically adjusted the timeline, pushed it out a little bit more to give us more time to give not just schools, but school councils and staff the ability to provide input into the budget process. The subcommittee also asked that we use, instead of a level services budget approach, to start with a needs-based budget.
These were here.
Yep. Every person had one. There were two, one from this year, one from last year, so you see what it looked like last year, so you can compare the shift in the dates. Although
You
towards
see the copy of what you're talking about, I don't seem to have it. Thank you.
That's it right there. I can see it.
My stuff.
Yeah, it's right there. I'll take this one.
Oh, you don't have yours?
It's here. I have so many papers I printed out.
It looks like this.
I got it.
some of this work's already started. I mean, we start every year, almost the minute we put the budget to bed, we start over again. But if you go to the second page, I went by school committee to school committee, where we have on 1/9 draft 1 being prepared for you, which is what I believe the budget subcommittee wanted, a needs-based budget. Towards the end of that month, we should be getting the funding projections based on the governor's budget. So by the time we get into early February, we would have a needs-based budget and the governor's budget and perhaps any other sources of funding that we may have discussed up to that time. That would get us to hopefully provide the FinCom, usually requests our budget by the middle of February. And then we would have a draft that goes both to the FinCom and the selectmen, so that by hopefully early March or the end of February, we can have a hearing so we can send the town our finalized budget that would go to town meeting. I did make one other note there, and that is that we do have the capital needs of the district not necessarily fitting into our budget, because it's always been something separate from our budget, but I do have some concerns that we have some needs that hopefully will be identified through the process by each of the buildings, such as, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Simonello left, but his, I know his PA system is dying. Some rooms don't work, some rooms work when they want to, other rooms don't. The whole phone system, when it rains, it just works in some places and not in others. So just some considerations that you have, and other than that, that's information. If you want to change the timeline, let me know. I can, that's why I put draft all over this. If you want to change it, move it.
Michael?
Yeah, I just didn't want to stray too far away from the timeline, and I think it emphasizes a situation with a memo from the town administrator that in a month he wants our budget. So we immediately convened a budget subcommittee meeting, and we've started the process. This timeline does not meet and is not expected to meet our coming up with a first draft budget. I believe, certainly it's my opinion, that the town administrator can apply logic to anticipated budgets, but we don't want to be quoted as coming up with our first budget as a service level service budget. We'll look at that. That'll be part of the process, but this timeline looks like it's very thorough and reviewing a needs-based budget as our starting point, which it always has been.
Tony?
Dr. Colley is the information I'm looking at, the increases FY14 draft.
The increases that you have there, I explained a little bit on the opening paragraph of my memo. You know, I have people already asking me, well, what would the contractual increases be? Obviously, there's some assumptions to be made, so I listed them there. But if you just take what we have this year, move it over to next year, and apply whatever contractual obligations we have, lane changes, increases in contracts, you know, you're going to be getting closer to 2.5% increase for our budget, just our side of the budget.
So it's just important to note to people that just contractually, we're probably at 2.5, 2.6 right now, so.
We're somewhere in the neighborhood. I mean, it's early in the year.
So even if it's 1.5, or even if it's 2, I mean, that leaves us very, 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 very little wiggle room to bring on new programs or, you know, to try to move this system forward.
Is there,
Does
When
anybody?
we discuss the budget, we should talk about a larger computer for the school committee. We're having trouble with this thing. But let's stick with the timeline and not the different needs. Yeah, no, I got it. I mean,
and a note too that those are not school committee's computers. Those are actually the students, to be used by the students that we are using as well. So, is there a motion on this, the budget timeline?
You need a motion on
We need
it?
a motion, so.
Just
Just if you wanna make changes or.
Or is everybody okay with this particular timeline?
as long as we meet the town's
No, I just,
We won't.
February 15th draft.
Tony?
They have not said when they want it. The draft. I'm just using last year's time.
Okay.
Like Dr. Colley mentioned, the budget subcommittee met Monday, and most of the discussion was around, you know, the needs-based budgeting, and we're going to try to, or we asked Dr. Colley to try to, well, to get more. We're going to try to break the budget up a little bit more, and have each school administrator have more say or individual say, or at least we'll be able to see it more individually, and maybe that would help us and help everyone to see where those needs are and where we need the funds.
Anything
So
else on
that'll
this?
be different this year.
Site-based budgeting, correct?
More site-based budget.
I have a question. Madam.
Yeah.
Is this just discussing the timeline or actually the budget that was listed online, the 2014 proposed budget? I just had a couple comments about it, but I don't know if you're discussing that or if you're discussing the timeline of preparing the actual budget.
We are discussing the timeline. What are your specific questions that are on there?
I guess it was more of some concerns because I noticed that it was a 2.5 increase, and it seemed like there were no decreases, and the only decreases, it looks like we're trying to replace it with expenses versus looking at areas that we can, rather than say we need an increase in our budget next year, where are the areas that we can potentially decrease so we're not going back and asking for additional funding, was one question. And then the second one was in regards to the middle school. It would seem like, especially with the discussions before, that something really needs to be done, and how can we even create a budget next year without even that considering the potential of possibly doing something with the middle school and the high school, or somehow changing the way the middle school currently is, whether it's closing it and combining it with another school. And if we do that, there may be ways to decrease some of our budgets. For example, in the guidance, and I know I've mentioned this before, but there are 5, and it says it in the budget, 5 guidance counselors in the high school. We have more students in the middle school than we do in the high school, and there are 2 guidance counselors in the middle school. And in the middle school, you really need guidance counselors because junior achievement states that the decisions for kids to go to college happens in the middle school year, so we need to be really putting an emphasis on that. But yet there's 2 versus 5, and so I mean there's just those things that I think of when I look at the budget and how are those being considered, if at all.
Dr. Colley, do you want to respond at all to that?
Well, if you take a look further in the timeline, it speaks to, you know, the budget subcommittee wanted to approach it from a needs-based first. So that indicates you go out to each of the sites, you talk to the staff, you talk to the parents through the school councils, and they say, okay, we need these things, we want more of this. Like you just said, you think the middle school needs more guidance counselors. That's a need that you think would help the middle school. That would go onto the needs-based. Now, if you look further in the timeline, when we get some idea of where our revenue will be at, usually it's a matter of what the town thinks they have and can apply to the schools or to the town government in general versus what the state can provide versus any other sources of resources, be they grants. You know, a few years ago we had the ARA grants that we were able to capitalize in, savings from special ed if there is any. Once we have that information, here's what we want, here's how much we have, then we start to go back and pare it down if we need to. At this point, I can say, you know, just looking at more or less trying to keep what we have, moving it into next year, and you know, applying the contractual obligations, we're probably going to be somewhere around the 2.5.
This is really our first look at the budget, really, at this point, and what we could be looking at for next year. I will just speak for myself and say at this point, I'm not prepared to, I mean, last year we went with a level funded budget. We worked with what we had. I'm not prepared to do that again, you know, and I think the town is allowed the 2.5, up to the 2.5. Hopefully, hopefully we can maybe share some of that money with the town and apply some of that to our budget next year. But, I mean, as a starting point, I think we still need to look at what we need and then go from there.
When we go back to our students in our schools, when we say what is it that we want, can we also go back and say what is it that we can potentially reduce or save? For example, in technology, I know that we purchased some extra technology this year for needs that we had. Well, we're probably not going to need to do that again this year. Or what ways can we do that? So while we're gathering those resources and asking them, okay, tell us what it is you need, can we also say, okay, what other resources can we identify at the same time? So maybe...
Well, and that's part of, I think, what the school councils will be doing along with the principals. They're talking about the site-based, so the principals will have a better handle on what's going on in their schools and what they have and need versus want, and just, you know, as a want. But remember, too, we do have the park assessments coming down the pipeline, and the new assessments are all going to be computer-based, so we're going to have an entire grade of students having to test on computers.
Several.
Huh?
Several
grades. So that's coming at us. We are behind on technology if you look at the ratios of us versus some of the other school systems. So yes, we did make a lot of purchases, but I think we're still trying to play some catch up too. But we do have that coming down the pipeline, assuming they do end up forcing that at us, where we will have to test on these little computers. And it'll be faster. You know, we've been talking about not getting our MCAS scores fast enough. This will be faster. It'll be almost immediate. They'll be able to get those test scores right away and be able to look at what the results are instead of waiting months and months. So we are looking down, you know, the next year or two at needing more than what we have now to be able to sustain. But good questions.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And generally, when the administrators, you know, ask for something, I mean, they're very, very much aware of the financial constraints. So generally, they're willing to, you know, it's usually a juggling game for them. And I mean, we hear it all the time. You know, well, we're going to move this. You know, we're going to do this so we can do this. Or we're going to, you know, it's rare that we're actually adding We're usually taken from somewhere.
And I know that you're not coming, well, at least I don't think you're coming to asking for like gold and all this, great things. You just want your minimum. But as someone kind of stepping back and looking and seeing that, we wanted that 2.5%, didn't go through, the vote didn't go through, and then we came back, we had to reduce our budget. And then we came back, now we have a savings. So I think it's about, I think it's about building credibility and saying, if we come back and say, well, we need another 2.5% increase, where we just realized a savings of $144,000, but we're replacing it by hiring people. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Mike? Sorry, I thought I saw it and then it went away.
Just to make a plug for the school council process, that, hold those thoughts, bring them forward, and that's the first step, which is clearly at the beginning of the process, so it's a good time for us to hear it.
That's a good place, too, to bring concerns directly to the particular schools.
As well as here, yeah.
And it, like, more specific school-related concerns, like a particular, for the West or the middle school, because they will sort of take that and chew on it and ultimately bring it here. So those meetings are posted on the websites, I think.
On the district calendar.
They're all open meetings.
No, you don't.
They're all open meetings.
You don't have to have a child, absolutely not. So, I mean, anybody, community member can go, just anybody that has any concern about the school or whatever, they can go and listen or go and input.
Encouraged to go.
Yeah.
And I would say call ahead, because like today was supposed to be the high school, and I was at a meeting, and by the time I got back, apparently people had said, "Oh, I can't come," and it was canceled, and I had to rearrange my whole schedule. So.
But I think the middle schools had 2 meetings this year already. So, the school councils are meeting, and they are, sort of mini school committees, if you will, at the school level. Okay. Sped onto, I'm sorry, skipping one, FY13 superintendent evaluation and goals. I know we had talked to you about doing a separate meeting, and then with Thanksgiving, I figured we'll put it back on the table tonight, and
I can't even, I'll use this one.
I did also give.
We're into what, the B?
B.
Because I had an item I wanted to slide in there on the agenda. Somehow it's been missed, and I thought it's appropriate to all the rest of this information on this agenda, and I thought now would be an appropriate time to bring up those items. I don't know why you didn't anticipate them. You've gotten emails from me on the issues, and I think now is an appropriate time to take up that business. So if I could have an opportunity to make a motion.
What is it, Mike? I haven't gotten any emails from you in about 2 weeks.
Actually, you were away. The first email on Friday, October 26th, went to Chairman Pro Tem Antonio Viveras. You then took over that business that I had requested, and what I'd like to do is make a motion relative to those emails and bring that business forward. So if you'd like, I think it could start with an appropriate motion, and then we could get into further explanation.
Can you give me an idea before you make a motion?
I think through the motion would be the appropriate venue. If I
Okay.
could have that opportunity.
Carolyn?
Thank you, Madam
If
Chairwoman.
it's not on the agenda, it's not on the agenda.
Excuse me, I'm asking the chairwoman to make a decision.
I will listen
I
to your.
thought she
I will
said I could
listen-
make a
I will
motion.
listen to your motion, Michael.
Thank you. And I appreciate that we follow the format accordingly, now that I'm making an agenda. And my agenda would be to convene a executive meeting to discuss with all non-bargaining unit personnel, 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 code of conduct expected of their position.
Is that done? Is that the, that's,
I want to make
that's
sure,
short?
Nikki.
I was gonna say that's short.
And I think it would be great if you could read it back, Mickey. You did a great job the last time. Thank you.
To convene an executive meeting with all non-bargaining unit personnel to the code of conduct of their position.
When? Like when?
As soon as possible, Monday.
I'm not going to entertain that motion.
Motion to overrule the chair?
I just have a point of.
Go ahead.
Because I do want discussion on it, but you've allowed him to
I
say
wanted
it,
to
but now
hear
you've
it.
made a decision
I
on
wanted
your
to.
own.
I wanted to hear it, and I don't need to entertain the motion. We've had this discussion, and I don't think this is the appropriate time to bring it forward. I have not received an email requesting anything beyond. I mean, this is the first I'm even hearing of this tonight. At this point, we had an executive dealing with all of this, and
No.
yes, we did, Michael.
There's no truth to what you just said. You allowed a motion. Now let's call the discussion and have
Well,
a vote.
let's have the vote then, Mike.
No, let's have
Go
some
ahead.
discussion.
Have
That would
have
be-
the mo. All right.
Would you like-
Who seconds Michael's motion?
That's,
I'll leave it just for discussion purposes, please.
Can I make a point?
I'd like to open the discussion where I make a
Michael,
motion.
open the discussion.
No, I want to make a point first. We have an agenda, it's not on the agenda. We have open meeting laws that we have to abide by.
And we have, and the chairperson has made her decision.
Michael?
So, I'd like to refer to an email that I had sent, and it talks about reports of particular non-union, non-bargaining staff personnel. What did I reference in the motion? That category of employee and having to do with code of conduct. And so I requested immediately a meeting to decide if such reports were true, and that according to school committee policy, that if sufficient facts were determined to be true, I then suggested that I would make a motion to begin a process of addressing it. And I sent that on to the chairman at the time. That request for that meeting was then forwarded on and scheduled by the chairperson, and that business was never brought up. So this is the reason for bringing it up this evening, dealing with it as a category of employees. We've never addressed this issue, and it's this email asking it to be addressed started back on October 31st. And it was forwarded on to you, Michelle, and that's when, what code of conduct are we expecting as a school committee?
I'm looking for the date. What was the date of the meeting?
If we're going to discuss the motion, why don't we take it up by starting with our policy book that addresses the issue? I just want to schedule. You want to schedule it in executive
No,
because it's
actually,
bargaining with
well,
non-union staff people? Is that? I don't understand why we can't get to this issue.
This motion, this was discussed in an executive session, and I'm looking for the date, and I don't remember the date. And
It was not.
several
It
members-
was bundled with a totally different. It was
several. Michael, I have the floor. I listened to you.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
I listened
checking your
to you.
phone for dates.
Well, I
and
was looking for dates, but I can't
that
find
don't
it.
exist.
Yes,
That
on
was never
November
discussed, though.
on November 2nd.
Because prior to me walking
It
out of that
actually
executive-
was discussed after people got up and walked out.
And that's where the issue is.
when members choose to get up and walk out of an executive session,
I
the
request a
meeting
copy of the
cannot
minutes
stop.
from whatever you're talking about. If I walked out, I haven't seen any minutes from it. Did you think I should hear anything about that?
We haven't had another executive session since that date.
Okay. Well, we'll get around to it. Right now, there's a motion. If you want to repeat the motion and call a vote or have more discussion, I don't, you can't take a motion off the floor. I don't,
I'm not taking the motion off the floor. I'm
I'm
prepared to
sorry.
vote on
Whenever
it.
you're ready,
Let's
I'd
call
like
the
to have
vote.
some, well, my input simply, out of due respect, I appreciate your position, is you're not going to vote for the motion. I'm not saying what you're saying. My understanding is
Sorry.
you're not going to support the motion because you feel this has been gone over.
I do.
I don't feel we've gone over what, if we repeat the motion and then call the vote, because I would never have made that motion if I thought that discussion took place.
Mike, why can't we just schedule a meeting?
That's what the purpose
Because
is.
it's been a month and we need to take our roles more seriously, if you're asking why I made the motion. But I'll call the question if we can read it first. And
The purpose is to have a meeting.
This was discussed.
The purpose is to have a meeting.
Vicki, can you
That's
please
all.
read the motion?
To convene an executive meeting with all non-bargaining unit personnel for code of conduct of their position. as soon as possible.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
One person has not said anything.
He said I abstain.
I think if we want to schedule a meeting, then let's just schedule a meeting instead of playing games.
Instead of calling it out in open session, and I've received nothing through emails for weeks.
I've introduced these as public documents. I'll be withholding them until after they're
What is
any
public
that's
documents?
I made mention in held-up emails that I sent to you that you just said did not exist.
I said I
So
haven't
I'm
gotten
gonna
anything to
I
you in
will
2
make
weeks.
those
Michael,
emails public, and I thank you for
You're
spending
not,
time with me this
Michael,
evening.
you're putting words in my mouth. I have not received anything from you in 2 weeks' time requesting that another executive session be called. An executive session was scheduled on November 2nd, where 2 members got up and walked out.
Sometimes that's what we have to do. Thank you.
Well, and the meeting continues when you have 3 people.
So just send me those minutes when you get a chance, and have the record indicate I've left for the evening. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay then. On to FY13 Superintendent Evaluation and Goals. As I was actually starting to say, I did put on everybody's blotter the superintendent rubric at a glance to take a look at, which is the breakdown of basically the proficient, et cetera, ratings that we looked at 2 weeks ago. These are the 60 some odd breakdowns that Glenn Kuchar, I put it on your blotter. You want this one? Those are the 60 some odd or so breakdowns. We are required to evaluate on the top 4 items. Standard 1, Standard 2, Standard 3, and Standard 4 are required. Then you have the indicators underneath, and then you have the elements underneath each of the bold indicators. My thought, and I don't know how Dr. Colley feels about doing this regarding the evaluation, is, and I think this is what they're doing for the teachers, is that we use the rubric that is here, but highlight certain areas that we feel as a school committee will be looking a little bit more heavily at. For example, I mean, I'm just throwing one out there, just because of the evaluation stuff going on with the new teachers stuff, perhaps educator goals and it would be something that we would look at more heavily this year. So that's just some basic thoughts, but these are the breakdowns that Glenn was talking about when he came down and said this is what we need to look at. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Because that has been brought up before, educator goals, if we can't see those evaluations because of their personnel issue, how are we going to evaluate him on his educator goals?
And that's a good question. How do we assess? These are questions that we need
Yep.
to ask. How do we assess? Because you have to, part of creating this evaluation is the SMART goals, as they say, where they have to be specific, measurable, action-oriented, rigorous, realistic results, and time. So we have to be able to measure in some way, shape, or form, and that's how we have to decide with him, how do we measure that, because it's hard.
Okay.
If you would allow me to walk through some of the information that the state puts out, just so that people can see that administrators, both at the school and district level, have some correlation with what the teachers are doing. It's a little different because, again, you as a public body is evaluating somebody who is within the school as a professional, whereas those of us who are administrators within the school are evaluating other professionals with the credentials that we have that allows us to peek into all their lives and everything they do around teaching and learning in the schools. So what you have up here is those areas that kind of go with each other. You have instructional leadership versus the teachers that are looking down at the nitty-gritty, what happens in the classroom, curriculum planning and assessment. We look at management and operations, whereas they are looking at what they're doing with all the kids. You'd still have that component of family and community engagement and the professional culture. So you have 4 standards for effective practice, and then they go ahead and break it down even further. And the idea is to try to come up with some categories of areas for you to look at as you evaluate the superintendent and as I evaluate my administrators, and they in turn evaluate the teachers. So this goes all the way down the line. So what you have is a system of rubrics. The superintendent rubrics also applies to district level administrators. Then you have a rubric that's similar, but it's built more or less to attach criteria at the building level, so that you can have people who are school level administrators being evaluated slightly differently. And then you have the classroom, and even a special one that they created for instructional support personnel. Those are people like guidance counselors, some of the consultants that we have, perhaps the people who take students out, like Title I teachers. So all of them have some amount of correlation between one and the other. So one looks at what the superintendent's doing in relation to the principals, the next one looks at how the principals are relating to the teachers, and then the teachers are looking how the teachers are relating to the students. The idea is you're going to have 2 areas to give a summative performance rating of either exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. Those 4 standards of practice, those 4 big categories, and then you have the educator goals. Now, the law doesn't really require you to have X number. They suggest 2 at least goals for every educator. At least 1 in the area of practice and 1 in the area of growth. So for from myself on down, we have asked for this round for teachers to have at least 2 goals. Although, I've not held that standard to my administrators. If they want to have more, they can. That's why originally I had proposed like 9. I've cut it down to 7, and perhaps tonight we can deal with that a little bit further. So those 4 issues, the 4 standards and the goals, actually make your overall assessment of whether it's me, from you guys, myself, to the administrators to the teachers. And here's where we're going. We're looking at least in the teacher side, you have 1-year self-directed growth plans, or a directed growth plan, or an improvement plan. Now, teachers can have 2 years of being in a self-directed growth plans. Administrators at this point, in the regulations provided by the state, can only be in 1-year plans. So we get evaluated every year. If you're in a needs improvement category, you have to develop what's considered to be a directed growth plan. And all that means is there's certain areas that you would specify to me, or I would specify to an administrator, or an administrator would specify to a teacher. Here are the things that we're going to do together to get through the year and make sure you're proficient. If you're unsatisfactory, it's a more directed plan that says, here are the things you have to do, or you cannot continue to work here. So it's a little bit more of a directed growth plan in the sense of, this is not for growth, this is to make sure that either you improve or you're not here. And those growth plans, the improvement plan or the growth plan, can be as long as a year, but they don't necessarily have to be as long as a year. So that's what happened when you get those ratings. And you give these ratings, if you're on a one-year plan, you give them twice. You do it once as a formative halfway through the year. That formative rating is not your final rating. It's just kind of giving somebody, here's where you are right now, so that you have between now and the end of your cycle for improvement. You have that amount of time for somebody to say, hey, in these areas you need to improve. If you do that, then we'll put you back up to proficient by the end of the year or by the end of your cycle. So for teachers, they could be on it for 2 years. If they're on a self-directed growth plan, but halfway through they fall into an area of needs improvement or unsatisfactory, they can stay in that self-directed growth plan if by the end of the cycle they go back up to proficient.
Dr. Crowley, aren't we supposed to be talking about your evaluation and goals rather than teachers?
But I'm trying to give you an idea that this is for everybody. It's just the teachers could be a 2-year plan or it could be a 1-year plan. So for myself, it's no different. So hopefully halfway through the year, which we'll have to figure out where that falls now that we're kind of further into the year, there would be a formative evaluation. So these are the 3 plans. The improvement plan can be a minimum of 30 up to a year. The directed growth plan is usually 1 year in length, and the self-directed for administrators, 1 year. There will eventually be a student impact rating. They're looking for trends and patterns. So what they're looking for is growth over 2 years on multiple measures. And this is something we have discussed here before. For example, MCAS is just one measure. So what's the other measure, at least, that you would use to evaluate the performance? They're looking for areas of growth and achievement, and again, through multiple measures and evidence. So hopefully, as you saw today, the elementary school is looking to create those connections between not just MCAS, but also the reading program that we have, the math series that we've created, and other ways to measure. For the superintendent, I guess you could use the same ones. And that's what the district determined measures. So by next year, by next September, we will have hopefully identified what those district determined measures will be. So we're working with the principals, we're working with the staff to come up with, in each discipline, what are those measures going to be. And again, they'll be looking at 2 years of data across multiple measures, and then that will have an impact on whether you're proficient or not. Here's the cycle. I think you've seen this before. Self-assessment, analysis and goals, the plan development, then implementing the plan. The formative assessment and evaluation is halfway through the plan, and then at the end of the cycle, you go back into a summative evaluation. So I've basically used the district improvement plan as a self-assessment, and I've proposed goals on professional practice and student learning. Again, you're looking for the SMART goals, and use the evaluators of the superintendent have the final authority. So I propose, and you say, we don't like this, we like that one, take this one out, put this one in. It's basically, it hopes to engender a conversation between the evaluator and the person being evaluated. And again, you're looking for a goal statement, what actions you're going to use, what's the benchmark, and again, that becomes your educator plan. And you put it in play, And the idea here is that you begin to collect evidence. So it's not how do I feel about this area, but what do I have, whether it be, for example, presentations like this, memos, the weekly reviews that I send, things of that nature that you would be able to say, I've seen or I haven't seen this goal being addressed, or this area of the rubric being addressed, or I don't think it's done well. So it gives you a little bit more of an ability to present evidence both from the evaluator's point of view and the educator's point of view. So the idea is to get some amount of evidence into the evaluation process. And again, the evaluator should provide feedback. So I'll give you an example. I've been going into just about every school once a week and taking the time not just to talk to the principal, but also to go into classrooms and do evaluations, and at least the new staff that we have. And usually in it, I either give suggestions or I check a little box that we have that says need to talk, and then I sit down with the teacher or staff person and I say, hey, here's the things I think you could do differently, do better, or hey, I was next door and they were doing this, you may want to try it, you may want to go see them, that kind of a process. So again, it's strategically collecting evidence that's naturally occurring. So you have things like school committee presentations, you have times that you see that I go do stuff in the schools. For example, last night, was it last night? School council? Yeah, we had the school council. Was that Monday night too? It was a lot.
That was last night.
I thought it was last night.
No, last night was parent-teacher conference.
True, it was Monday night. So those are the kind of things that
Monday, Tuesday.
we don't know what day it is. And then midway through, typically in January or February, educators, including the superintendent and all the administrators who are on a one-year plan, go through a formative assessment. So the educator and the evaluator reviews any evidence that you have collected, that I have collected, and you assess the progress towards those educator goals at that time. And you provide, go through the rubric, go through the goals and say, you're on target, or not. And that gives that person from that point till the end of the cycle to improve or change whatever you feel is not happening the way it's supposed to be. And again, at the end, the evaluator submits an overall summative performance evaluation. Usually the superintendent or the person being evaluated provides a self-assessment for the year, and then the evaluators go and look at the information provided and any multiple sources of evidence that you have, and then provide a summative performance rating. So this gives you an idea of where people should be on the schedule, if you will. We're a little off. September, October, that's when the goals and the plan should be put together. We're pushing December here, and then you implement the plan between October and May. January, February, you have the formative, and then in May you have the summative evaluation.
I'd just like to comment on the timeline, because we do need to talk about the timeline too. Through discussion with Dr. Dargan, because my concern is if we shift the timeline to assume the MCAS scores in this evaluation process, and then in a year to 2 years from now, switching over to the Park assessment, she said it will be computerized, it will be almost immediate on the data collection. We'll be shifting back again with any evaluation. So I have a feeling if we bump back the evaluation timeline, we're going to be bumping back up again in a year to 2 years. I don't know if that's an issue or not.
Chair, I would tend to think that we should, even if we have to revert back, because one of the most important things on a superintendent's evaluation is MCAS. I mean, everyone's judged by MCAS. So, if we have to move it back again in a year and a half, we move it back.
Just food for thought is all that was.
Sure, that's what everyone else would do.
So are there thoughts on, or I'm looking for thoughts on the rubric, and I'm also looking for thoughts on the goals as well. So do you want to take the rubric first and then move to the goals? Or,
Well, I mean, I thought we were going to meet, just have a specific meeting and
Like we usually
go
do.
over this.
We have a little workshop and we go over.
I thought we were going to get together.
well,
we
we
have
didn't have, we
conversation.
had Thanksgiving and there was nobody here the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so
we could
I
still do
said,
it.
let's bring it back up tonight.
I mean, I'm not really prepared to sit down and say what I want goals to be, other than I want MCAS to be part of it.
Can we at least give him some feedback on the goals that he has, those 7 goals, and maybe have some discussion, because I'm curious on even how some of these things will be measured. And I'd also, yeah, go ahead.
No, I took your draft goals, and I tried to put them into the rubric, and I just don't know whether the way I'm categorizing them would be the same way you would categorize them. I mean, some of them were clear, but some of them, it seems to me that they were more on the instructional leadership end. I only found one on the community engagement piece, which was your number 3. I put that on community and business engagement.
There is not necessarily a correlation between the goals that you have and the rubric. You can still, so for example, we have obviously just about every teacher out there now with just 2 goals. So there's no way that those 2 goals are going to cover everything on their rubric, which is very similar. But what we tell them is, hey, we're going to look to make sure that you can achieve those 2 goals that you have, but we're also going to look at the rubric. So when we got together with the union leadership and the administration in a labor management committee that we have, we identified out of that rubric certain items that we wanted to make sure they paid attention to. Doesn't mean we ignore the rest, but we're going to pay attention to them. So it triggers in the teacher's mind, oh, I better have some evidence that I've done those things. So even if it's not on the goals, you can still, by all means, evaluate on all the items in the rubric. It's a lot. But what you will get from me is probably a binder that has, here's evidence for this, here's evidence for that, here's evidence for the other thing. So hopefully I can provide you with evidence for everything that's in there. But you may want to, like we did to the teachers, specify some areas that you're saying, I want more evidence in that. I want you to show me that you really can do that. But I didn't necessarily put it in as a goal.
I understand what you're saying, but these do fall into these different categories.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that where I think I'm putting them, there's some consensus in, because I actually circled things, and 4 of these things are things that I circled. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of alignment, but I just wanted to try and put your goals into this and then figure out what the next steps is all.
And Eric, to answer your question about MCAS and that piece, originally when I had the 9, we had talked about one of the goals in there was MCAS, and everybody said, well, how are we going to do that if we don't get the MCAS until the following fall and in September? That's why I took it out. I can very easily put it back in so that if you want to have this as a more lengthy conversation, to look at those areas of the rubric or these goals or the other 9 that I had put out there. 9 goals is a lot.
Tony?
Dr. Colley, my questions would be on like number 5 and 6, the 70% and the 80%. I mean, how does that correlate to where we are today? far as, you know?
It's usually, well, part of the problem with those is, again, we're asking our staff to develop measures. So you heard, for example, today that the teachers are trying to get their kids on the Fount of San Panel leveled reading areas to fall within their actual grade level. So I don't exactly know where everybody is because they've just started that last year. Towards the end, you know, I have some data. For example, I know the Macomber school had done this, and at first they thought 80% was too much, but in some rooms they hit 85%, but in others they didn't. So I'm saying that, to me, that would be an area that I would find acceptable if you had at least 80% of the kids exactly on grade level, because we know just by looking at national data and data from other research that you're always going to have a certain segment of the population a little behind until you develop a system to catch them up, the intervention system, whether they be put into special ed or remediation services, or they get remediation within the classroom because you've identified them.
But what about number 5, the 70%, the reading at grade level, K through 5?
The problem is, right now, do I want to hazard a guess of where they're at? I know that's what we're pushing for, maybe even more, but
So,
I don't.
if I'm to understand you correctly, you don't have the assessments even in place right now to be able to say whether it's
But we have to have them in
60,
place by
70.
September. So we're trying to not just say we have to have those assessments in place. We also want the students to be fairly proficient. So 75%. If you just look at MCAS, in those 2 or 3 grade levels between 4th grade and 8th grade, you see that there's a progression. So in 3rd grade, you may have 50% of them reading on grade level. But by the time they get to 8th grade or maybe even the high school, they're considered to be proficient. So you would consider them to be on grade level. So on average, when you stretch it between K through 5, I'm hoping that we're hitting at least 75% in that crucial time of grade levels. So by the time they get to the middle school, where we start saying, oh my God, these kids really need to be on the ball so they can hit the 8th grade exam and also hit the 10th grade exam so they can graduate at a proficient level or above, I'm saying those lower grade levels need to step it up so that they're going.
Okay, then I guess, I guess I don't know, where should we be? What's a realistic number for K through 5 students reading at grade level right now?
Well, if you take a look at 3rd grade, we're about 50%.
But what should we be at?
I would suggest to you that 75%
You have
should
70
be
here.
70 you have.
75%
Okay.
should be more appropriate, but because we haven't even started that, I put it at 70.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to
Um,
see 80. I've seen schools hit 80.
Why do none of these goals, you have some middle school stuff here, and just to go back to a few others, I think number 4, the implementation of the new educator supervision evaluation program, I think that's kind of silly to have as a goal because
State
that,
law requires you to do it.
right, we're doing that anyway. So, I don't know that would necessarily be a
To
goal.
be honest, I've stolen it because just about every superintendent in the
I don't
Commonwealth
have
is
a
using it
problem
as a
with it
goal.
being in there. I just don't see it as a goal. But more specifically, I know we've kind of targeted the middle school as needing some help in very specific areas, as well as the elementary school. So while we have something on here to create common assessments, which I think is absolutely necessary to make sure that all of our students are being assessed equally and graded equally, what are we doing and what can we put in here to create a goal for that school, whether it be MCAS, or something where we have something, pretty specific, 80% at the high school passing, and 90% passing their final course summatives. We have elementary school goals here. Nothing at the middle
Here's the issue. At the elementary, we have already started the process, and this is where the new report cards are coming from. We've started it last year. We've worked on it all, through the summer and now into the fall, in looking at ways to measure where the kids are at all the way along the year. So that gives me a better idea of being able to go in and sit with Ann, sit with the principal, sit with the teachers and say, where are we at in November? Where are we at in December? Where are we at? Because obviously I can't go and teach every kid at the elementary school or the middle school, but I can certainly go in and look at how people are doing at those grade levels if we have a system of measurement that works. At the middle school, we're still trying to put that together. And again, it's hard to say where they should be at the middle school if they don't have something that's common across even two people teaching the same subject.
Chair, I think we've identified that we need to actually have one of those meetings.
That's fine.
I mean,
Well, I was actually
we
just.
sit here all night, another 3 hours, and still be doing this.
I was actually just looking at my calendar as he was speaking as well.
As we look at that meeting, do you want me to bring back an MCAS goal if we're going to shift the timeline to September?
Absolutely.
I would say bring them
Okay.
back. Absolutely.
Dr. Colley, do we, have there been any assessments done this year that are comparable to, that we have from last year already? Do we have anything to compare this year with last already? No?
Not yet. Two measures.
Right. Not just MCAS.
But no other, the kids haven't done any other, these other assessments.
Kids in other schools have done, like elementary, have done their
Right.
Iowa
COGADs and
testing.
Iowas and all that, haven't they already?
No, we're not doing those this year because we're purchasing the second measure for some of these areas. So you could use MCAS, you could use the teacher developed measures, and we're looking for outside of the teachers measurement. Galileo, I think, is the one we're going to use for math, because sometimes as you're looking at your own practice, you want somebody from the outside to also give you an idea of how you're doing. The MCAS does that, but it's way at the end of the year, and you don't get it until the following year. So we're looking for something that gives them more immediate results. So, for example, they can do the Galileo, and every 2 weeks, the kids take an assessment and tells them, yeah, what you were learning for the last 2 weeks, there's weaknesses here, 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 or there's certain kids that are not getting it. Go back before you get to June and find out the kids didn't get it. Go back and fix it now. So that's what we're trying to do.
All right. So do you guys have the 3rd or the 4th work for anybody next Monday, Tuesday? What does everybody's calendars look like?
I would prefer it to be a Wednesday.
Or Wednesday?
Tuesdays are really bad for me.
Wednesdays
the
are
5th?
fine.
The 5th?
Yeah, because I've
Does that
blocked
work?
off this time pretty much
Okay.
for
Yeah,
school
we're
committee
taking a bath
meetings
that
anyway,
day.
so.
You're taking a bath?
Wednesday's fine.
Does the 5th work?
December 5th?
We
Is that
going to the
Noah?
BCC STEM?
I don't know who has a dentist.
What time?
Dentist. I don't know if it's me or
Maybe
my
you.
kids.
Can we do it around? Can we do it around 6? Because I want to go
Yes.
to the BCC.
Dentist is at
6
5.
this Thursday?
6 works.
No, the
Wednesday.
5th.
Wednesday,
the 5th
December
at
5th.
6.
5th at 6,
Instead of 5.
Hey, I can actually put that on my phone. Yeah.
Yes, you can.
We're hoping you put it on your phone.
All right. So December 5th
Meeting
at
room
6
B?
o'clock. Yeah.
Yep, we could use meeting room B.
If I could just say a couple of more things.
And we're going to call this what do you want to call it?
Workshop.
Workshop. Or whatever that term is that we're supposed to be using.
Meeting to go over the evaluation.
It is a
Or the
public
the new
meeting, correct?
evaluations.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah.
It's a public meeting. It's just, giving some idea of how you want me to organize between now and...
Tony?
First a point and then a question. Personally, I think that whole 1, 2, 3 at the elementary school for a couple of years,
That's not what we're talking
I know,
about.
gave us a false sense of where these kids are. and I think we only got the real sense when we took the MCAS. So that's said. The other thing is that new reading, the online,
So why not a Mike and
the
me?
Biz, what's it called? Biz 3.
Achieve 3,000.
All the students are doing that, at least in school, right? But
Only 4th and 5th.
so all the 4th and 5th graders are doing that in school, and hopefully some of them are also doing it at home.
They can, yes.
All right, so why don't we use that in the other grades? Why can't we start?
What's the one that's first grade's doing?
You pay by the number of kids
What's
that
the
use
one
it.
that first grade's doing?
Because that is actually good. You don't
It is.
I thought we had
Is that Kid Biz?
$55,000 tracking.
In
Yeah.
in Christopher's class with
It adjusts.
Yeah, that's just
it's
stuff
an
they have.
online
in
thing.
How much is it if we had licenses from K through 5?
What is
Ooh.
that? What is Kid Biz? What is Kid Biz?
Like 30,000, 40,000?
Probably
That's
closer to the 40.
Is the Kid Biz the one where they have the headphones and they speak into it and they read? Because that's what the first grade class is using.
Two different things.
She's doing something.
There
in the
may be
first
some
grade.
kids that can handle it. Just maybe if you're in first grade, you can only read at first grade level.
Program.
Well, I thought Beth said she was piloting something. I don't remember what it's called. I'll
So what is
find
that
out.
license to bring that down to the 3rd and to do the 2 grades? Or just one more grade?
We purchased a 2-year license of 250 licenses for 2 years.
For
That's
4th and
about
5th.
40,000. We approved that for us last year. It gives us the Lexile rating for each of our youngsters. And over a period of time, we're supposed to see grade level.
So are we paying for it if students aren't using it? Like, let's say only half the kids go home online, a quarter of the kids in the class, 30 kids in the classroom.
Well, we use it in
They
school
use it
too.
at school.
They're, okay, so they are
So once
accessing
they
at least
log in, they log
online
in.
also.
We're using it the minimum amount, but we've also done parent training already. We had about 30.
To make sure the parents know it's available.
We gave them the code, the access, so they can go in and read their youngsters' reports too as well. And we're monitoring it constantly, looking at the data to see the growth of the students.
You know, I'd rather see them do that for 20 minutes every morning than
I just looked it up. It's Raz Kids.
That's reading literacy.
Yeah.
It's Raz Kids, R-A-Z Kids, and that's what it sounds similar to what that is.
Do we have to pay a license for that?
You don't need lessons.
Yeah, that's what they're doing in first grade, and it's the same thing. You read the books and you can speak into it, and then she can go in and see how well they're reading.
I just want.
But it allows them to read on their own while she's working with other kids too, and hear them. All right, so December 5th at 6 o'clock. Meeting room B. That is an open meeting.
And I'll put in
And if
the old goal
yep,
back
we'll
in
work
there.
on that. She's getting good on the postings. They make her nervous. I want to see.
Okay. I tried to provide you with as much information as you could possibly ask on this next item on the agenda. We did invite Mrs. Carter.
What? Eric?
No, he can finish, I just
Oh.
want to be recognized.
Okay.
Okay. We did invite her, and she basically said that she couldn't. She was hoping that we would just provide her with a plan for corrective action that she could approve. She sent back some information as to what she was expecting out of the plan. Let's see, give you that one. And just for comparison's sake, because I know somebody had asked about this, the 6-year ago corrective action plan had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's like 17, 20 different areas that needed corrective action, and this one only had like 4. So we've done a lot of work to make sure we comply with all the regulations, and let me see if I can get to the one that we're concerned with.
Be the non-compliance.
Mm-hmm.
It's SE8, page 17 of 69.
SE12. SE9.
Did you print things out?
Yes.
This is from like papers that I don't have?
Yes.
Threw me for a minute.
When you take a look at SC8, the biggest one that they wanted us to address is a representative of the school district who has the authority to commit resources of the district, who may also act as the chairman. The person who acts as the chairman, who is one, qualified to supervise or provide special education. 2, is knowledgeable about the general curriculum, and 3, knowledgeable about the availability of resources of the district. And that is the area where she was suggesting that we needed somebody different. The other thing that I provided you is a job description for the special ed director. She also wanted to make sure, because this was one of the discussions that we had when Ms. MacArthur was here, was the reason why she wouldn't be able to be that person is she actually tried to come up with a couple of weeks or try to go through her calendar to show that in many cases she was not available. For example, November 7th she was in Fall River. November 5th she was at Somerset. Let me see. November 14th she was in Plymouth. November 15th she was on the phone with Framingham. So she has a lot of responsibilities that take her out of the office or that require her to be in the office to coordinate with other schools. And so just trying to give you a flavor of what her job description is like. When we asked Mrs. Carter, she basically said this is not the person you want doing the job.
Few questions. This 3-month schedule, was this taken off of her actual schedule, or did she handwrite this after you asked for it?
Some of it, I believe she cleaned it up, because if you look at her handwriting, it's much better than it usually is.
Because I went through it, and for a 3-month period, she only has 14 IEP meetings in 3 months. 14. 4 of those are over a telephone.
Yes.
Okay. We had asked for a job description. I see the job description for the liaison, and I want to know what her new job, this is back in 2000, what her new job description would look like. They're doing the same jobs. And the last question is, I know I read the report, I've read it many times, I printed it all out, and it just says they need somebody to be at the meetings that can make decisions. So I'm going to ask you a very point-blank question. We hire a supervisor, they go into a meeting. Does that person have to get approval from Ann Harkin or you to implement a program?
No, they shouldn't.
On the organizational chart, though, this is where I think we're not going the right direction. The liaison reports to Ann Harkin.
Well, somebody's got to supervise them, yeah.
But how can she make decisions for the district if she has to report back to someone higher than her?
Well, in every organization, you have to have somebody supervising the work of the people there. I mean, whether she reports...
Supervising the work, but what about supervising, sitting in an IEP meeting and saying, yes, we can do that, or no, we can't do that? Can she leave that meeting? Because first of all, and another...
She shouldn't have to leave the meeting. She should be able to sit
at the
there.
end of the meeting, at the end of the
meeting's
meeting.
over, go back into the office and...
Just report what she did.
And report what she did, and not have said to her, because one thing that's can never be mentioned in an IEP meeting is money.
Right.
So
That's why they want this person there.
I can't justify having another person on a payroll. I feel really bad that we went to a town meeting and asked for $70,000, and then the next day we came to a school committee meeting and we had $355,000 surplus. I was quite embarrassed about that, trying to explain that over breakfast 2 days at Cozy Nook. If we hire somebody, I just think we're paying for their health insurance, their retirement. I only see 14 IEP meetings in 3 months. If she can't put it into her schedule, then maybe we have the wrong person as a director.
You have to understand those IEP meetings are the ones that take pretty much 4 or 5 hours at a clip. Those are the ones that...
So she missed all her meetings in the afternoon when she had an IEP meeting in the morning then?
No, sometimes they take a half an hour, sometimes they take an hour, but many of them take a lot more than an hour. Those are the ones she goes to. And it doesn't prevent her from going to an IEP meeting. If there is a big concern over the services for a child.
I'm just wondering what her new job description will look like, because this is year 2000. This is new liaison, and it's almost like they're doing the exact same job.
The only difference is this person would go to just about every IEP meeting there is.
So just
Which Ann doesn't.
Not going to be there then.
Hmm?
If you say just about.
Well, I'm imagining a day that person's sick, that Ann would have to go to those IEP meetings. I'm imagining the day that she's going to training, those kind of things. But this person is supposed to be at the IEP meetings so that when there is a decision to be made, that person can make it right there on the
Other than
spot.
Fall River, New Bedford, any districts our size have 2 people that closely together, a director and a special ed supervisor. Does any other district that we can look up right now and...
In some cases, they designate people within the school to have the qualifications. And if you understand, that was one of the issues with the .2 supervisors, that we were trying to get people who were qualified to do these things, or try to get them to a point where they would be qualified to do this job. But the problem is, the person that we have here at the high school has a job that requires her to go to other schools, so she couldn't be here for all the IEP meetings. That's why she said you can't use that person. You had the person at the middle school who was trying to get, trained to do this job, but by the time we got the review, he wasn't ready, and then the person left. The person at the elementary school, again, we switched people, and that person is now not qualified. The only person that we would have that's qualified is the person at the Macomber school. That's the only person she said, yeah, you may be able to leave that one.
I read in the report that it almost sounded like we did not have a school psychologist, that we were contracting outside.
Which part of the report?
That's an older report.
2010. Okay.
Yeah, we did not. We didn't. That's when we hired the person.
Okay. Make sure that was the correct one
You
then.
can
I
look it
thought
up.
that
No, that was part of the recommendation of that report. And if you're referring to Dr. Siri's report, is that the one?
Say that again,
The
sorry?
2010 reports that
I
Dr.
do have that
Siri's?
one also.
That's the one that also said, you may be able to get away with the .2s, but we don't think it's going to work. And if you look in there, he basically says, my suggestion would be that you have one person doing all of this. But at that point, we didn't have the money or the wherewithal to hire just one person.
Well, we've asked an awful lot of our staff. We've asked a lot of our administrators. We've asked a lot of everybody. I mean, we even tried to, and this is how I took earlier, relieve you of some of your vast number of stuff that you have to do. We ask everyone to do more for less. I just can't see why we can't ask her to do more. She has 14 meetings in 3 months. 5 of them are over telephone.
Well, but those are the ones that get us into litigation.
I read this, and my immediate question is, we have to submit a corrective plan that has to be accepted by them. And they've indicated to you that unless you hire somebody, they're not accepting the plan. What is the ramifications of that?
They said we have to have somebody who's
Never said
qualified and fits those criteria.
Which is our SPED director.
But they also said you
clearly
couldn't
said
do
She
that.
can't do both jobs. It said it here. I read it. It said you cannot put this responsibility on that person, because that person has all this other stuff they have to do. And all of the non-compliance issues are in the SPED department. And it's improved immensely since '06. I mean, there's no question about that.
Well,
But in order to keep that improvement up, you have to have a person that's in the office dealing with all of the administrative pieces of it. They have IEP meetings in all of the buildings all the time.
Yes, I know that.
14 meetings is not how many meetings happen a month.
Oh, God.
A lot more than that happens a
God.
month.
But that's how many she showed up to.
Those are the ones she attended, but there were other meetings going on in other buildings. So she's supposed to go to maybe 30 meetings a month and to do all the other stuff and do the administrative stuff? How much can you ask of a person?
So how about we hire someone that doesn't go to let her go to the IEP meetings, but hire someone at a lesser pay scale rather than a master's and everything else that was required for the job to do the administrative stuff in the office.
Because you have to have a certain certification, is my understanding, in order to have that job. You can't just hire anybody to be the special ed director.
No, I don't mean hire a special ed director.
Tony?
Eric, I think what they're saying, and I would imagine this to be the case, that all these other meetings, generate work.
Yeah, I'm sure it
Generate
does.
paperwork, phone calls, follow-ups, and I would imagine that's where a majority of her time is taken up.
Yeah. A lot of it is being on the phone after the meetings happen, where the person has to sit down and say, okay, this happened at an IEP meeting in Framingham, for example, and now we have to try to figure out whether we can avoid the cost of taking this child on that's supposedly coming our way that, DCF wants to put in our custody, but they're not sure of where the foster parent's going to live, and she spends 3-4 hours calling around DCF, calling Framingham, calling the lawyer, and then trying to provide a brief to the Department of Ed to make a determination whether it's really our responsibility or it's not, then call back the lawyer, then call back Framingham, then call back DCF. That's what she spends her time in. And yes, she may go to that one IEP meeting, but after that IEP meeting, it's the 20 meetings that happen after that. And that's why Corey's saying, you can't have her do that and then get to all the IEP meetings, because if one IEP meeting generates enough work to take you a whole day to deal with the ramifications of that meeting, what happens to the IEP meetings that happen that day? And that's what we don't have. I mean, if we had more people in the schools that were qualified, that were cognizant of what the special ed laws were, that knew how special ed works, that knew enough about both the school programs and the special ed programs and how much money we have and where's the resources, then yeah, we could have people within the buildings doing
What
it.
title does the person have at the Macomber that has those qualifications? What is their title at that school?
They are the school adjustment counselor, .2 SPED supervisor that also has a special education administration license.
And we have talked, when we went through all this budget stuff last year, that was one of the positions we said, it's hard to justify her being at the Macomber, being a school adjustment counselor for preschool and K. If she's a .5 there, she can easily be a .5 SPED supervisor. And we're not adding another person to our payroll.
Well, let me put it this way. We need more than a .5 because the elementary, the middle, and the high school, when they have their IEP meetings, it's usually one whole day.
However it's divvied up, we have someone who's qualified in our district.
Tony?
I was just going to make another point, Eric. The 14 IEP meetings. Just food for thought. Maybe that's how many she is even able to attend.
Oh, I understand that. I just can't understand hiring. We've got resources in our
Well, I mean,
department.
ideally, if we have somebody in the system, then obviously, I don't know.
I mean, that's every parent thing we've ever been to, any budget, anything that's ever been said, the one job that always comes up as, do we really need that position, has always been that adjustment counselor at the Macomber. It's always been on the table.
But that, again,
And
that's
there's
not...
always been something said that, we can't let, you can't go.
She does more than just adjustment counselor at the Macomber. That's the issue. She is the liaison with all the early childhood people. She does a lot of the screening. So if she's at IEP meetings, she will not be doing those things. Then who's going to do that?
Carolina?
Again, my question is, if we submit a plan that they don't approve, what happened?
They can, the worst case scenario is they would send you back a notice saying, you haven't complied, you have till the end of the year to comply, and if you don't, we'll withhold your money.
She'll send back
Or
a
it'll go
yes
to
or a
the
no.
federal government, and
She'll
they'll
send
come
back
down
a
on
yes
us.
or a no, because that was a direct question that I asked her. What if we submit something to you and you tell us no? And she said, well, I will send you something back that basically says, no, we can't accept that, try again. And I think she said 4 times.
First.
And then after the end of the year, then they will basically take it off of their plate and
Give it to the
give it
feds.
to the government, who will then flag it as whatever. So
Right.
that is something, I mean, we can submit a plan and cross our fingers and see, does she
You can
approve
delay the
that?
inevitable, in other words.
Kind of.
If it's
yeah.
inevitable, it might be accepted.
Or it could be. It could be.
You know,
So
we're all jumping
Everything we
conclusions
do,
that's gonna be shot
everything we
down.
do in the system is waiting.
Well, all I can
Good
say is,
idea.
you know, we've floated some of these scenarios by her, and she basically said in some of these cases,
But that
no.
doesn't negate the fact that we can't submit a formal request for something. I mean, you asked maybe, but it doesn't, I mean, preclude us from trying and saying, hey. And then we go back to the drawing board if necessary.
Well, we could post the position. If somebody internally applies, they can apply. And if they have the qualifications,
But
they
then we're going to have to hire someone for that position.
Okay, well, you admit.
may or may not. You may find that, you know, you don't hire somebody for that position, then something else falls apart, and we come back in February and say, hey, that piece is falling apart. Say, for example, we posted it, and that person that you're thinking of applies. She has the qualifications. She could probably do the job. And then at the end of the day, somebody from MAC is going to be coming, perhaps, maybe not, but I'm just knowing what she does. Somebody's going to come back and say, this piece of the job's not getting done at the MAC.
I mean, I just left that school last year, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but let me tell you, it's very hard to justify an 8 and a .2 and something else. Rather than
My son left that school last year, and I have the completely opposite impression of it, so it's, I guess, what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could take this up again on the 5th.
Put it on the agenda.
No, I mean, hey, vote for it. I mean,
I'd like to at least try to make some kind of give him some kind of direction, whether it be throw a bone out and see if she bites or what. But I think we should at least.
Well, why don't we just
make your
throw that
motion,
out there and
make your motion, and
let's
we'll just
have,
vote on it. I mean, hey, it's
Just so you know, in terms of budget, there is money still remaining in the budget because we did not implement the .2s. So we do have money in the budget. So it's not, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you another piece of information that I asked if I could say that tonight, and she said yes. We have to start looking strategically at these positions because Mrs. Harkin will be retiring at the end of the year. So we will lose our director of special ed. We will replace her, like I said, going from 20 areas of complaints and compliance to 4. We'll have a hard time replacing her. So in my mind, having somebody in a position like this that perhaps eventually could grow into that position of special ed director would not be a bad thing. But I don't know if that helps you. That's more for next year.
Well, in light of this information, then we definitely need to take it up on the 5th.
Why on the 5th?
You're going to be there till
We
11
already
o'clock
have
at
the
night now.
workshop stuff. I'd rather do that at a regular meeting.
Where the public can actually hear. I'd rather do it at a regular meeting also where
Yeah.
people can hear what's said.
Because people don't
They don't
necessarily
go, they're not
tune
going
in.
no one's going to show up to our
That's fine.
training.
Well, in light
True.
of this new information, I would make a motion that we have Dr. Colley post for the position.
Yeah, I'd say.
with the hopes that maybe that person could potentially go into the job, because next year we'll be left with nothing.
Is there a second for Carolina's motion?
Want to formalize that, just post it?
Yes.
Post.
Are you seconding that?
Second.
I was going to, Casey, just for the sake of, a second for the discussion of it.
Discussion on this?
So we will, we'll post it, and, again, in light of,
Well, that's assuming it, if it passes.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm saying, I'm
Okay.
thinking ahead here. If we'll post it, and depending on what happens with that,
So,
we will, I
If
mean, the
this-
school committee ultimately will
I'm
still have to
sorry.
approve the hire regardless, so.
Do we have to approve that hire?
Why would we have to?
No, we don't.
We have nothing to do with that hire. It goes, if she falls under the sped director, she's going to be hiring.
You basically, what you would say is, yes, we're going to use the money that's there for that position.
So I guess that's my point. I mean, do we need any further information from now until maybe that hiring takes place?
I'll be very honest, I was simply going to use the same rubric we used for the supervisors, the .2s, and just add up the pieces of the .2s that we have and use that.
But that position would be at your sole discretion, not like the assistant superintendent, so. Well, we're not
It's
not
not-
advertising that, we'll advertise.
No, that one will come back, when we start, I will ask Ann when she wants me to start advertising for her position.
Eric?
Two questions. When did we buy eSped, that program that does that special ed program?
I want to say 2 years ago.
Okay.
What is that?
It's a program that,
Runs it's basically a database program that runs all the IP meetings when they have to be redone, when the evaluations, triennials, annual evaluations, and then it actually archives all the information we do at every IP meeting. Yeah, it's.
and second, since you'll be putting this out to bid, what salary are you looking at?
Well, it'll be prorated because it won't be the whole year.
Let's just
Point
say
two
this
is-
for a whole year. What's a whole year going to cost us? We're going to own them next year anyway. In the 2014 budget, we're going to have to now put
The-
another.
Here's what I did. In terms of the salary range, it was anywhere between 12 and 15 per .2. So if you have a full-time, 12 times 5, about 60 to 75, depending on.
I hope you won't use
60
the
to
calculator.
no 60 to 75, depending on their level of experience, how many years they've been around, how much
So the minimum we're
they
looking
have a
at is
doctorate,
$60,000.
CAGs, 60. Yeah.
This is for the supervisory position. as well.
Supervisor.
And I think in fact of some of the new information, I think we need to be looking for more of somebody that might even have higher qualifications to be potential replacement.
And now you're looking at.
Well, but it's going to happen. If in fact it's going to happen.
You may not hire the same
It's not the
person.
first job we've ever had.
True.
Right.
It's not the
I
first
would-
job, so we're not
I would
going to
not-
experience
So
that
would it
can't
make sense
Right.
from 20 to 6.
So would it make sense to hire a supervisory position, and then basically we're able to
So a
decide
new
on
sped
that
director
person?
comes in and says, why are you guys doing it this way? I can do all that. And how do you get rid of someone we just hired?
Well, that's what.
No, that's what I'm saying. Do we then give that person, or allow that person to stay as the director?
But I'm looking
They
at the
can apply.
qualifications, and they're very different.
Very different.
You can't fill.
You can't train this one to be that one because they
No,
don't match.
they don't. That's what I'm looking at.
So what
we're
was just presented to us though was like, we want to train this person to be.
You could have, well, wait a minute, you could have a person
Apply
who has those qualifications, who's willing to come in at a lower level,
Try it out for you.
try it out, and if they don't work, you don't offer them.
Is that
If they
some?
Google Westport Community Schools and they see all the problems we have with our budget,
I know.
they're not going to come in at $60,000.
Is
We
that
need to
something
talk
that
reality.
we can require?
Yeah, you can put anything you want.
And usually I would put preferred, like, master's required, CAGs or doctorate preferred. That's usually how we word those. to try to see if we can get people more interested who may have more experience and more background.
Dr. Polly, how would you, let's just say this all passes and we have these applications coming in, these resumes coming in. Who would you have look at those? And
Well, I'd probably have the three of us and the two ads and myself to start looking, making sure that, one, they have some experience, because like Eric said, you don't want somebody right off the gate. They have to have some experience in special ed, otherwise they wouldn't fulfill the criteria here. If they have the special ed certificate for administration, that would be a plus, because either now or in the future, you have people in the system.
The administration part of it? Is that the,
You don't necessarily have to have the administration, but you have to have something related to special ed. It could be the administration of special ed, or it could be
no, but the
I'm a
difference
special ed
between the
teacher.
two, director and the supervisor. What are the big ones there? What are the big?
It could be the same certificate. The supervisor positions we created a couple of years ago when we were doing negotiations.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion on these. Anyway, is there anything pressing that? All right, all those in favor?
No.
Aye. All right.
Now,
Madam Chair, I have to be gone by quarter of to get to a basketball.
These should
game, so
go, we're almost done.
I just want to let you know that.
Okay, thank you. Member request for professional development. This
Can we
is,
table this? Because I think if it's the person that left the building, I think we should table it for discussion.
When is this
when is
meeting?
this?
I think it already happened, hasn't it?
No,
No.
this
No.
is different.
Oh, it is? Okay, so it's not the case?
That's,
No.
no, that's something different.
Okay.
This, I think, when is this?
not exactly sure. I think there is
This
a meeting
is
next
MASBO. This is the
next week.
Massachusetts Association of School Business.
officials.
Okay.
This is the training, the certification to be a
School business official.
official.
Oh, okay.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure about this one.
Table it.
We do need to table it. I mean, if he misses the deadline, he misses the deadline. It's just that we could bring, if you could bring it up on the 5th, though.
I don't
one
have a
item.
problem bringing it up. Oh wait, here it is.
Sent.
December 4th.
Fourth is their first meeting, I think.
But this says, thank you for registering for the MASBO December bi-monthly meeting on December 4th, 2012.
They're required to go to all of the, it's about 2 years of meetings.
Do we have a meeting prior to that?
Fifth.
I don't,
No, it's after.
I know I paid it, but I don't remember how much it was.
And this is to become a certified business manager for a school as if you were working for the school?
Yes.
Wow. I'll go. So
is
what
the
we're
cost
saying
of
here,
this?
somebody's been going,
The,
but they
the
haven't.
only concern that I
No, he
have,
hasn't gone yet.
Oh, he hasn't gone yet?
No.
No.
December 4th, it says, right? December 5th. it
This
starts.
is not a school committee mask thing, or what, this is the school business office. This is different.
It'd be
This
like if
isn't
I
mask.
went to the trainings that Andy goes to, because I happen to be an attorney, so I want to go to school council trainings.
it's actually a little different.
What was
This,
that idea, though? Just telling you.
this one's a little different because it's set up, here's what happened. Over the last 20 years, you used to have people who came out of the business world, went to work for the schools as their business managers with CPA degrees or MBA degrees, but didn't know a lot about schools. And the state is now saying that you have to have an educational background in order to be a school business official. So you have to have not just the business side of the equation. So for all those people who were MBAs or CPAs that were working for the schools, the state said, we will allow MASBO to create a program to bring those people who are working in the position to have a mentoring type experience where you meet every other month or every other month, and you go to trainings on how to do your job, not just from the business perspective, but also the educational perspective. The problem that I see is that that program is intended for people sitting in the position of school business officials. So I don't know how he registered, but
Can I ask I'm reading this, and it makes it seem like this is not his only date.
oh no, it's bi-monthly.
It's bi-monthly, so if we miss this cutoff, there's always another cutoff.
No, he's got to go to all of them if he wants to get the certificate at the end.
Okay, and this is, their first one's on December 4th.
They already had one. I don't know how he got into this one.
But
Is
we
there
are,
a cost associated with it? I'm sure there
Yes,
is.
yeah, but I don't remember
I'm
what
on
it
their
is.
website now, and I can't find,
Look for membership dues.
because it does say that it's closed.
And we've taken all monies out of our,
But we're not, Masbo,
but we've taken all our monies out of our education, correct?
No.
I thought we zeroed out to nothing for
no,
us.
we
No, that
didn't,
was-
because it
that was a
wasn't
request.
voted to do that. We had $2,000 in there, but,
Actually, I thought we did vote, we got rid of it. Yeah,
I
we-
wanted, yeah,
I
we
wanted to vote to get rid of it.
Yes, that, I
We
do remember
wanted
you
to.
saying that. I thought we
Yeah,
wanted.
we wanted to.
If we want to go to, I thought, like, if we want to go to class, we pay for it.
Right,
Pretty much.
We did.
but it's still in there, it's still a line item.
But I guess my concern is that this isn't really, this is for somebody that would be working within the district, not so much for a school committee member.
It's more personal, I would tend to think, than.
That's
I
what,
don't
that's what
know.
I understood.
Why don't we table it and then he can,
Yeah.
we
Motion to
can
table.
Well, I don't have a problem
Second.
tabling it, but,
If it misses, you know something? We need a table, if it comes up on December 5th, if it's too late, it's too late.
you'd have to put it on the agenda.
I mean, it's,
Too late.
he needs to be here.
I don't have a problem with
So-
that, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the policy is that the school committee has to approve us to spend that money.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. So.
And I have noticed, if you notice online, there is a cancellation policy, so.
So if this is not voted in favor, then he's gonna, if he's stuck in it, he's gonna have to, if he can't cancel it.
I don't know what the cancellation, it just says, on this little application there, it says cancellation, I've read and acknowledged the cancellation policy.
Oh,
Right, but he registered under the Westport School Committee, he just don't want the school.
right. And
To
it
be on
says
the hook.
it says I'm a member,
Of the school committee.
no, of the MASBO.
Oh.
We're not members of MASBO.
Right here.
Mm-mm.
Apprenticeship internship program application. That might have the amount of money.
But do we know what the cost is? Do we have that here?
I don't know.
I mean, how can we approve something?
This is a scholarship. That's not it.
I think there's been a motion ready to table it.
Yeah.
I
That's
second-
fine.
Yeah, I second it.
Oh, my
Okay.
system went down.
Do we vote?
We don't need to vote to table
Well, we
it.
gotta,
Do we want to? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed?
Oh boy.
Motion of mics next time, or computers.
Mike?
Nice.
This
Mice?
thing, you have to hit it hard to.
Ratify WFT educator evaluation. I just hit the button and it went away. Contract language, is that what it said?
Basically, do we know if, I was checking my email to see if they had sent me information.
Yeah, I know. They were doing that today.
I know the teachers were supposed to be voting this afternoon on whether to accept almost the entire state proposed language with a few changes to it. Actually, they're in your
So we haven't heard from them.
ratification
So
letter.
we
No.
need to share this.
So
We
we need to-
share. We need to,
We need to table this?
we need to table this
Yep.
because we can't ratify it, we don't know if they've
Nope.
done it, so.
One doesn't preclude the other, but it's up to you.
I would feel more comfortable with
I'd
them
rather
ratifying
have them,
first.
yeah. Because I know they were doing that this afternoon, or supposed to meet, so. All right, is there a motion?
So you want to
this?
table that to the 12th?
Or even,
On the 5th, it's gonna be a
Even on-
5-second thing on the 5th.
even on the 5th?
I don't know if you, unless you want to call it a special
Call it whatever needs to be
meeting.
called.
We can call it a special meeting to get it ratified if you want to.
Okay, we can do that.
I-
It
or
won't be a
we-
workshop, and I'll have other
That's fine.
things on the agenda.
That's fine, because
I think we should get this done.
Okay.
We'll have a meeting,
I mean,
then
if you
we'll
have
have,
an
then
email
we'll have the
saying they
workshop
ratified
after
it,
the
I'd say all
meeting.
for it, but
All right,
So, motion, seconded.
who's motioning?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Did you motion to table?
I motioned actually to the table.
No, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, approval of the minutes of Wednesday, November 2nd, 2012. You all right there?
You have to hit this thing hard.
Is there a motion to approve
Which meeting was this?
November
We
2nd?
went into executive.
It was very short.
Now, should the guests be listed on our open session? Because they weren't guests of our open session. I mean, it's just a clerical thing. They weren't
say
actually
that
guests
again,
until
Sam?
we went to executive.
True.
Andy and Mike Vaughn.
They really weren't here as guests. They were just public at the time.
So can we take
True.
them off?
You can take them off. Just put it into the notes that
Yep.
the minutes will be amended to reflect that they were not guests
Right.
at this meeting.
Is there a motion to
Motion,
approve with
motion.
that amendment?
Motion to approve with the amendment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, November 14th. All motion. Is there a second?
One last thing. Hold on. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Carolina abstains.
Or she wasn't there.
New school committee business, we have meeting Wednesday. We'll take the ratification up hopefully Wednesday. And, anything else? Correspondence, there's nothing.
You didn't get my letter?
I didn't. Did you send me a Thanksgiving card or something?
I sure
Christmas
did.
card? Did you?
Where's mine?
Because I didn't get anything.
That's a joke.
She's like, do I write that? She's panicking.
You can write it if you like.
Comments and statements, none.
Yeah.
Good job
You
tonight, by
have
the
a-
way.
you have a
Yeah, I
comment?
have yes, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
This, just, there's probably very few people out there that don't know this is going on, but we have the holiday shop at the elementary school this week. Tremendous success.
Is it a Christmas shop, I hope?
PTO.
They can
It's a
shop
holiday shop.
They can.
It's a holiday shop.
Call
The
it a
kids.
Christmas shop, please?
No, it's a Christmas. It's a.
Yes.
Oh, I see. What
Yes,
yes.
Christopher
It's a
bought
Christmas
himself
shop.
a little gift today.
It's a Christmas.
My boys
hol-
already came home with their gifts.
and I was influential in some of those
Wanted to give
purchases.
them to
He got a little done.
But anyway, but it's a great success. The kids come in, they bring in some money from home, and they get to shop,
You
and
get the flashlight.
they love it. It's going on all week, and it's it does well. It does. The kids love it. It raises some money for the PTO. I want to thank all the volunteers. And a lot of parents are there all day, now restocking, helping the kids, and it's been uneventful. The teachers come in, with the kids, they help, and so far so good. It goes on all week.
Christopher liked it. Since you have your little plug, I'll add a plug for the
Ornament.
Westport Music Boosters for
Ornament.
Friday night for Ornament. It's at 7 p.m. I believe.
give a plug, too.
Yeah, Ornament. It's middle school band teacher Chris Nunes' band, a Trans-Siberian Orchestra tribute band. So that's on Friday night at the high school. That supports the Music Boosters, so come out and see that.
We also had 3 students from our school system that played Pee Wee football for Portsmouth that went on to they won the state championship, went on to the New England championship,
Very
and
nice.
actually lost, but that was their first
Wow.
loss this
That's
season.
cool.
My son was one of them.
Congratulations to them. So they're middle school age?
Yeah, they're actually all in 8th grade here.
How-
Only 3 players from Westport played on the team.
So they went to the state championship?
They won the state championship.
That would be nice to
and
have
they won
them
2 games
come
in
and
New
see
England, and they
us.
lost in the finals.
Would the 3 of them be willing to come and see us?
I can always drag them.
Yeah, I'd
like We to come. want them
We
to
haven't had
come.
any kids here in a while. It would be nice to have some kids and just,
Yeah.
I know Mr. Simonello announced it at school one day, so the kids were
Nice.
pretty happy over there.
very nice. Very nice. Oh, and our,
What to do for-
our select chorus is singing with Trans-Siberian Orchestra or with Ornament on Friday as well, so we have kids in that.
And the induction for Junior Honor Society was last Monday.
And the induction for Junior Honor
Congratulations
Society.
to all of them.
Lots of
So-
good things
So
happening.
who do you want to put into the 12?
I'm thinking the 3 kids.
Brendan Costa, Colby Hawes, Drew Larrabee.
Be nice to have them. I love giving them little plugs.
And girls' middle school basketball started, right?
Yeah,
All the
that
boys
last
and
night.
girls played their
High
first
school
game last night.
started
Boys beat Seekonk. I don't know if the girls won or not.
I'm not sure.
There's a game tomorrow night home against Catholic Memorial.
There you go. Calendar for the week. This is something to do every
I
night.
was waiting for sports to start again.
Yeah.
I was missing it.